I am the most beautiful woman in the capital. Summoned by imperial decree to enter the palace for consort selection, I was singled out at first glance by His Majesty, the Imperial Consort, who dominated the imperial harem and enjoyed the emperor's sole favor, looked down at me with haughty disdain. Relying on beauty to win favor, how long can that last? You're nothing but a plaything. His Majesty will tire of you soon enough. I lowered my head meekly, my shoulders trembling slightly. She thought I was afraid. She didn't realize I was excited. Excited that she hadn't recognized me. Excited that the blade I'd been sharpening for so long was finally about to taste blood. I had served the young Miss Shin since childhood. After she died tragically in a desolate temple, Lady Shin took me in as her adopted daughter. Overnight, I rose from a maidservant to the sole legitimate daughter of the Shin family. They called me Shin Wanyue. Many envied my good fortune. Others whispered that I had murdered the real Miss Shin to steal her place. I neither defended myself nor paid them any mind. I devoted myself entirely to studying the etiquette and bearing of a noble lady, under the tutelage of a matron sent by Lady Shin from the palace. As the years passed and I came of age, my striking beauty drew countless suitors at every poetry gathering and banquet, many from prestigious clans and even the imperial family. But I turned them all away. Instead, I secretly summoned the most celebrated courtesan in the capital and begged her to teach me the arts of seduction, how to beguile, how to enchant, how to read a man's heart and bend it to my will. Every single day, without fail, through rain or shine, I studied with relentless devotion, until Song, the courtesan, had nothing left to teach. She praised me as her finest pupil, but curiosity flickered in her eyes. Miss Shin, with your noble birth and unmatched beauty, I cannot help but wonder what manner of man could possibly require such painstaking effort from you. At her words, I raised my gaze to the mirror and met the eyes of the face reflected there, exquisite, bewitching, unrivaled. A smile curved across my lips. Not an ordinary man, naturally. I paused. He is the son of heaven, the supreme emperor. Song was momentarily stunned. Then she said, but all the world knows that His Majesty dotes exclusively on the Imperial Consort. He once swore to her, one heart, one lifetime, one pair. For years, he has neglected every other concubine and never once summoned new maidens to the palace. Miss Shin, do you intend to wait forever? Yes. Their love was legendary. All under heaven knew of it. But, one heart, one lifetime, one pair, for an imperial house, that promise is harder to keep than to break. And besides, even if His Majesty truly keeps his word, I laughed softly, though a chill edged my eyes. The harem does not contain only His Majesty and the Imperial Consort. Half a month later, the date for the consort selection drew near. The Empress Dowager herself issued an edict, commanding all unwed daughters of officials ranked 5th grade or above to present themselves at the palace for the draft. My name was on the list. Song asked me how I had foreseen it. I smiled, because the Imperial Consort is childless. In the depths of the palace, an emperor could certainly be devoted, but he could not lack heirs, unless he was willing to hand his kingdom to another bloodline. But even if he were willing, the Empress Dowager would never stand by and watch her imperial line die out. So, the selection of maidens was inevitable. No one could stop it. On the night I entered the palace, I dreamed of the last day I saw my young mistress. We had walked arm in arm to Lingyin Temple to offer incense and pray. Before the Buddha, I was listless and distracted. But she was wholly devout. I asked what she had prayed for. Was it romance? She shot me a teasing glance, then tied the blessed pouch she'd received around my waist. I prayed for the Bodhisattva to protect you, to grant you safety and joy all the days of your life. In the bright sunlight, she was radiant, her eyes full of tenderness for me. She said, I am your elder sister, and it is an elder sister's duty to protect her younger sister. She always kept her word. So when bandits attacked us on the road home, she fought with all her might to hide me in the secret chamber beneath her. She refused to move, even unto death. Warm blood dripped onto me through the cracks above. I looked up and saw her gentle gaze, even as the outlaws savaged her. Though she was on the verge of death, she smiled at me and said, Don't be afraid. I am here. I do not know how long passed. Then, from outside the ruined temple, came the light patter of footsteps, a woman, richly dressed, her hair pinned high. She glanced down at my young mistress, long since still and silent, and laughed. Chinkia, it seems even you, the female lead, have no plot armor after all, and yet you die so ugly. Her smile was as venomous and twisted as a serpent's. I woke with a start, my face drenched in tears. Lady Shin sat beside my bed, her brow furrowed with worry. Let's not enter the palace anymore, please, no. I pushed aside her handkerchief, my gaze steadfast and resolute. Mother, I live for one purpose alone, revenge. The Imperial Consort killed my young mistress, so I would kill her in turn. That, and only that, would be justice. Outside the main selection hall, the candidates lined the palace pathway. Some were willowy, others voluptuous. Each had her own talents and graces. But the emperor sat high above, utterly bored, and selected not a single one. The only ladies who received the keep token were chosen by the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager asked me, as a matter of routine, whether I had studied the classics and which of the 4 arts I excelled in. But then the emperor suddenly cut in. You are the Shin family's former maidservant, the one who was adopted as their daughter after the real Miss Shin died? Everyone knew this story, yet the emperor chose to bring it up now. He meant to humiliate me. I met his mocking gaze. He seemed to be waiting for my reaction. Flight in shame, or tears of mortification. Instead, I smiled directly at him. Your Majesty actually recognizes me? I am truly honored beyond measure. This little playful remark, no one had ever dared speak to the emperor like that before. He blinked, startled, then let out a cold snort, his eyes raking over me. I hear they call you the most beautiful woman in the capital. In my eyes, you are not even a tenth as lovely as the Imperial Consort. Cruel words. But I merely blinked, as though I hadn't caught his malice. My almond-shaped eyes shining with innocent, crystalline brightness. Your servant is but a humble willow. How could I compare to the Imperial Consort's national beauty? Yet even a humble willow has its own charm. If I may be frank, Your Majesty, I often look in the mirror and thank heaven and my parents for giving me such a pleasing face. Humble, yet unyielding. The emperor laughed inscrutably and said nothing more, as if he'd lost interest. But the Empress Dowager noticed that he no longer wore that earlier listless, weary expression. Smiling, she said, Miss Shin has a lively disposition, a fresh vitality, and a lovely face. What do you think, Emperor? The emperor cast a lukewarm glance in my direction, then spoke. Keep her token. Then, but before he could finish, a palace maid burst into the hall, shouting, Your Majesty! The Imperial Consort's heart palpitations have flared up. The emperor shot to his feet and strode swiftly toward the door. Yet as he brushed past me, he paused abruptly and said, Shin Wanyue, you are hereby titled Noble Consort Yu. This was the only title bestowed by the emperor himself in this entire selection process. I bowed my head demurely, and hid the faint smile that flickered across my lips. All the world knew of the Imperial Consort's boundless favor. When the emperor first ascended the throne, he was ambushed in the hunting grounds and was saved by a horse trainer, who later became the Imperial Consort. They fell in love. Upon returning to the palace, the emperor's first act was to depose the empress and make this woman his empress instead. But both the court and the harem united in fierce opposition. The empress had done no wrong. How could she be so easily cast aside? And worse, the Imperial Consort's birth was far too base. So the emperor had no choice but to make her Imperial Consort instead. The Imperial Consort had been injured and could no longer bear children, so the emperor forbade all other concubines from conceiving. This was the greatest favor imaginable. In a common household, the people might call such devotion admirable, but in the imperial house, it was the height of folly and tyranny. Among the common folk, many likened the Imperial Consort to the infamous vixens Daji and Baosi. This consort selection had been forced by the Empress Dowager, and also for the sake of the Imperial Consort's own reputation. The consort knew this well, and so she had yielded one step. But she would never allow the selection to proceed smoothly. In the selection hall, after the emperor was lured away by the consort's illness, the Empress Dowager's face went white with rage. Her eyes fell upon me, and she spoke with heavy meaning. Noble consort, you were personally chosen by His Majesty. You shall reside in Jade Splendor Palace. Jade Splendor Palace and the Imperial Consort's Emerald Microcosm Palace shared only a single wall. The Empress Dowager was betting everything on me to steal the emperor away, but I would be a fool to trust her protection. For now, the emperor might find me mildly intriguing, but if I schemed openly, played tricks, and deliberately provoked the consort, I would not only fail to win him, I would earn his disgust. And the Empress Dowager would not lift a finger for a concubine who had fallen from favor. I was no fool, so I would wait. And the opportunity came sooner than expected. The Imperial Consort and His Majesty quarreled late into the night, and the consort drove him out of Emerald Microcosm Palace. Furious, the emperor stormed toward the Imperial Garden. Word reached me. I gathered the things I had long prepared, took a hidden path, and entered the garden ahead of him. In the garden, the emperor strode forward with a cold face, his pace wide and angry. His attendants followed in trembling silence, barely daring to breathe. And then, I stepped out from behind the bushes. Seeing him, my face lit up with delight. Your Majesty, what are you doing here? The emperor's brow was deeply furrowed, but I acted as though I hadn't noticed, and exclaimed in sudden realization. I know! Your Majesty came to see the fireflies too, didn't you? Fireflies? I nodded and held up the flowers and herbs in my hands. The palace grounds have firefly grass, so naturally, there are fireflies. The emperor was taken aback. He had never noticed. I explained with a smile. My late maternal grandfather was a physician, so I know a little about herbs and incense making. The emperor's expression was still cold, but his eyes fell on the blades of grass caught in my hair and on my shoulders, and the corner of his mouth twitched despite himself. And you stayed up this late for that? I seemed to blush shyly, but I did not explain. Instead, I stepped closer to him. Eunuch Wang moved to block me, but the emperor waved him off. I see dark circles under your Majesty's eyes. You haven't been sleeping well. Is something troubling you? I asked plainly. Without guile. The emperor sighed, a little helplessly. That sounds like you're trying to fathom the imperial will, a great taboo in the palace. I wrinkled my nose, unimpressed. What taboo? Before I entered the palace, my mother told me that I am your Majesty's woman, that we are family. So what's wrong with a wife worrying about her own husband? It was so direct, so natural. The emperor paused, his gaze fixed on me with unreadable intensity. He gave a strange, low laugh. Family? I nodded firmly, then said, Come with me, Your Majesty. I have some calming incense that will let you sleep soundly tonight. With that, I turned and walked toward Jade Splendor Palace. The emperor did not follow. I looked back at him, my expression questioning, as if to ask, Why aren't you coming? After a moment, he followed. I chatted the whole way. The emperor rarely responded, but the furrow between his brows had eased. Even his steps lightened. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Eunuch Wang release a silent breath of relief, and a faint smile touched my lips. When we reached Jade Splendor Palace, I handed him the calming incense, then bowed to see him off. The emperor looked surprised. You're not asking me to stay? I blinked, then smiled even more warmly. Your servant feels that your Majesty is tired and needs rest. He raised an eyebrow, gave me a long look, and turned to leave. But just before he stepped out the gate, he said, If that incense doesn't work, I'll be back to punish you. My eyes curved like crescent moons. Yes, Your Majesty. Your servant awaits you. I stood at the gate, watching his silhouette fade into the distance, like a wife longing for her husband. But before he even reached the corner, noble consort Wang stumbled into his arms, coy and bashful, and led him straight into her own palace. As she passed me, she sneered, What a fool! You had His Majesty right in front of you and didn't seize the chance. No matter how much the Empress Dowager favors you, you're just a pretty vase. Empty inside. I smiled mildly and said nothing. But the moment I turned, my face was cold as frost, and all warmth had vanished. In this harem, there were always so many fools. The next day, news spread that noble consort Wang had been favored. The Empress Dowager promoted her to noble consort and lavished her with gifts. She became the most triumphant woman in the harem. And because she came from a better family than mine, yet had been outshone by me during the selection, she bore me a deep grudge. She constantly mocked me. When she saw my embroidery skills were excellent, she even demanded that I embroider pouches for her, using me like a common seamstress. I refused, and she only tormented me further. The evening I delivered the finished pouch, dusk had fallen. My trusted maid, Huai Zhu, fumed with indignation. She's so arrogant, are we really just going to endure this? My lady? Of course not. I massaged my aching wrist, and a smile spread across my face. So, she doesn't have long to live. The next morning during the customary audience, noble consort Wang arrived late. But the Imperial Consort, who never attended these gatherings, came in haste. She was delicate as an orchid, her skin pale as warm jade, graceful and ethereal, like a beauty wasting away from illness. Even without a word, she inspired pity. But I noticed the spots of blood spattered on the hem of her moon-white skirt. She sighed, affecting a frightened air. Noble consort Wang, it seems, was so drunk on His Majesty's favor that she lost her wits. She tried to block my palanquin and nearly caused me to fall. That delayed my audience with Her Majesty. But, Your Highness, rest assured, I have already had her executed. She gestured lightly, and a group of eunuchs carried a corpse and threw it outside the hall. There lay noble consort Wang, just yesterday the most celebrated woman in the harem, now a bloody, mangled heap on the ground, lifeless. Every concubine present turned pale and trembled in terror. The Empress Dowager was so enraged she hurled her teacup to the floor. Imperial Consort, you have immense audacity, but at that moment, the Emperor strode in and placed himself before the consort. Imperial Mother, what is the meaning of this? The Empress Dowager pointed at the corpse. Emperor, take a good look at what your Imperial Consort has done. The Emperor frowned. What is this? At this, the consort's demeanor shifted entirely. Her expression turned sorrowful, and tears streamed down her cheeks. Your Majesty, noble consort Wang was disrespectful to me. The pouch at her waist was embroidered with peonies, a gross usurpation of rank. And worse, she said that your servant's beauty is fading, that you now look only to the new and forget the old. I lost my temper in a moment of rage and struck her. I never imagined she would die, a beauty in tears. How could the Emperor not comfort her? Noble consort Wang showed you disrespect. She deserved to die. Then he turned to the Empress Dowager. Imperial Mother. Noble consort Wang committed grave impropriety and should have been executed. The consort manages the 6 palaces, and punishing a concubine is within her purview. Pray, do not be angry. The Empress Dowager's face was ashen. Emperor, you have lost your senses. She rose and retired to her chambers, clearly incensed beyond measure. The Emperor started to follow, but the consort caught his hand. Your Majesty, your servant's heart aches. She furrowed her delicate brows, her expression radiating confidence in his favor. And as always, the Emperor did not disappoint. He consoled her with tender devotion. The other consorts filed out one by one. As I passed noble consort Wang's body, I glanced, almost imperceptibly, at the pouch hanging askew at her waist. In the bright sunlight, the silver-threaded peony was soaked through with blood, and it was even more vivid for it. My eyes curved in a faint smile. Forgive me, noble consort Wang. I merely sent you on your way. I had known she would wear the pouch I embroidered to humiliate me. I had embroidered the peony in silver thread, then covered it with a layer of gauze. The silver peony was only visible in sunlight. The peony is the king of flowers. For her to wear it was an act of defiance, arrogance born of favor. And the Imperial Consort, who already hated her for breaking the one heart, one lifetime, one pair vow, would never tolerate such insolence. I had wanted to watch a fine show of dog biting dog, but I had not expected that the consort, famed throughout the palace for her benevolence, would personally beat noble consort Wang to death. She was so certain the emperor would not punish her. And indeed, he doted on her and comforted her, even though she had killed a fellow concubine. But the consort did not notice the disgust that flickered in the emperor's eyes when he looked at the corpse, nor the faint trace of scrutiny that crept into his love-filled gaze. Yes, in the emperor's heart, his beloved was as pure and innocent as a white lotus. How could such a lotus have blood on her hands? If she did have blood on her hands, then surely it was someone else's fault. And those who erred deserved punishment. So noble consort Wang died. And that was that. No one cared. But once a white lotus is stained with blood, is it still a white lotus? This tiny, barely visible crack could not, of course, destroy the emperor's love for the consort. So what I had to do was widen the crack. After that incident, the imperial consort and the emperor reconciled as before. The emperor no longer paid any heed to the other consorts. He spent all his time with the consort. The Empress Dowager, however, had reached her limit. Using the pretext of a retreat for Buddhist devotion, she took the consort to Lingyin Temple. They would not return for at least half a month. With the consort gone, the harem concubines scrambled desperately for the emperor's attention. The imperial garden and the palace pathways were crowded with painted ladies vying for his favor. But I stayed quietly in Jade Splendor Palace, minding my own affairs. I rarely even stepped outside my gate. One afternoon, as I was carefully blending a new incense, a low voice spoke above me. So serious, what are you making? I looked up. The emperor had somehow walked in and was gazing down at me. My eyes lit up, with the eagerness of one presenting a gift. I brought the incense to him and explained. I heard from noble consort Lian that your majesty has been suffering headaches lately. My grandfather once told me that pear blossom calm can ease them. So I prepared some for you. If you burn a stick before resting, it will soothe the pain. I am beautiful, and courtesan song had told me that when I smile. I am like a peach blossom on a branch, lovely and alluring. And I knew exactly which angle and curve made me most beautiful. When I saw that flicker of admiration in the emperor's eyes, my smile deepened, but my expression remained as innocent as a child's. The emperor studied me for a long moment. You do put some thought into me. I like you, your majesty. I blinked, as if stating the obvious. You are the most handsome and majestic man I have ever seen, so of course I like you. For an emperor, physical appearance is the least important thing. But who doesn't enjoy being praised by a beautiful young woman? Emperors are no exception. The emperor stared, then laughed and tapped my forehead lightly. Flippant tongue. He took the incense and left Jade Splendor Palace. That evening, eunuch Wang arrived with a broad smile. Noble consort, His Majesty has chosen your name for tonight's bedchamber. Please make haste and prepare. Huaizhu was overjoyed and set the attendants scurrying. Lying in the flower-scented bath, I gazed at my reflection in the water. A smile crept onto my face like a serpent's, crooked, demonic, exquisite. Imperial Consort, the show is finally about to begin. On the night I was favored, the candlelight was dim. I lifted my arm and hooked it gently around the emperor's neck. My soft lips brushed, almost imperceptibly, against his ear. Beneath my fingertips, his skin grew hot. His breath against my neck grew ragged and thick. Then I pushed him away. To advance, first retreat. To receive, first refuse. That was what courtesan song had taught me. The emperor's gaze turned deeper, darker. He fixed me with a burning stare, something like a fire kindling in the depths of his eyes. That was enough. I lifted my waist and pressed a kiss to his cheek. My cheeks flushed, my eyes shy and innocent. Your Majesty, it was as if he could bear it no longer. He turned and pinned me beneath him. His calloused fingertips traced my cheek. You are so beautiful. My smile deepened. I threw myself into his arms and whispered, Then what are you waiting for? Your Majesty? Your servant is your woman. That night, we carried on until the early hours. The emperor's ardor remained high. Only as the sky began to pale did he finally stop. I had barely slept a few hours when I heard eunuch Wang's voice outside. I opened my eyes to find the emperor already dressing for the morning court. I scrambled up at once. Let your servant attend to your majesty. His voice was hoarse. You may sleep a while longer. I shook my head, though my whole body ached with soreness, and forced myself to his side. I wish to attend to your majesty. Seeing my persistence, the emperor said nothing more, but his eyes grew even softer. He seemed to have truly developed some feeling for me. But no sooner had he left than eunuch Wang arrived with a bowl of dark, bitter liquid. Noble consort, this is the tonic for the womb, bestowed by His Majesty. A cold laugh echoed in my heart, but my face remained docile. I drank the so-called tonic in one gulp. Ah, the emperor, so devoted, yet so heartless. Devoted to the imperial consort, so devoted that, to spare her grief, he forbade all other consorts from conceiving. And to us, he was utterly ruthless. After that night, the emperor called for me 7 nights in a row. During the day, after court, he would often stop by my palace to read, to play chess, or simply to sit and watch me make incense. I did most of the talking, he replied sparingly, but the atmosphere was warm. Within 3 months of entering the palace, I was promoted from noble consort to imperial consort, bestowed by His Majesty's own hand, and I became the most favored consort in the harem, second only to the imperial consort herself. The day the imperial consort returned to the palace, His Majesty and I were dining together. Your Majesty, this fish is light and refreshing, please try some. Before I could finish, the imperial consort swept in with a smile. Your Majesty, your servant has returned. Her gaze fell upon me, and her expression darkened. She gave a cold humph. It seems your servant has come at an inopportune moment. I have disturbed His Majesty's pleasure. The words were bold, but the emperor did not scold her. Instead, he rose with a smile, took her hand, and said, "Nonsense again. I have missed you desperately." At that moment, the emperor had eyes for her alone. They sat down together, speaking intimately. I could not interject. I could not belong. I knew the consort was deliberately humiliating me, but I showed neither anger nor hurt. I stood quietly aside, not intruding, not making a sound. Finally, the emperor remembered me and waved a dismissive hand. Imperial consort, you may withdraw. I nodded submissively. The consort preened at how easily he sent me away, the sneer already forming on her lips, but then the emperor added, "I will visit you in a few days." My eyes lit up, and a faint smile broke across my face, as if I were deeply moved. "Yes, your Majesty, your servant awaits you." All those days of companionship had not been wasted. The consort's eyes narrowed. As she brushed past me, her voice was barely audible. "A plaything who trades on her face, how long can such a one last? His Majesty plays with you, and soon he'll grow bored." At her words, my shoulders trembled, fragile as a clinging vine. The consort's disdain deepened. She thought I was afraid. She didn't realize I was excited. Excited that her killer stood right before her, and she remained utterly oblivious. After the consort returned, the emperor rarely called for anyone else to share his bed. On the rare occasions he did, it was to my palace. The concubines who had been most eager to compete for favor fell ill, one after another. Within half a month, 3 or 4 had died. On the surface, it had nothing to do with the consort, but everyone knew she was making an example of them. Trembling, the other consorts dared not scheme any further, terrified that they would be next. And naturally, the consort would not spare me. Because I had attended His Majesty the night before, I arrived slightly late to the morning audience. The consort used this as grounds to accuse me of disrespect and ordered me to kneel in the blazing sun as punishment. I knelt all day. When I returned to my palace, my knees were bruised and purple, aching to the bone. Huaizhu wept with pity and railed against the consort. I found it all rather laughable. The next morning, I forced myself to the Qinquan palace and handed the newly made incense to eunuch Wang, carefully explaining how to use it and in what quantity. I said nothing of my injuries. Every word was filled with devotion to His Majesty. That evening, as Huaizhu was applying medicine to my bruises, the emperor suddenly appeared. I looked up in delighted surprise. Your Majesty, what brings you here? I moved to rise and bow, but remembered my wounded knees and instinctively tried to hide them. He reached out and gently moved my hand aside. Seeing the purple and blue bruises, he frowned. Injured like this, and you still brought me incense? Aren't you a fool? I bit my lip gently. Your servant was afraid your Majesty wouldn't sleep well. Truly foolish. He sighed. Without me, what would become of you? I blinked, and nervously clutched his sleeve. Why would there be without you? Your Majesty, you're not going to abandon me, are you? He straightened, looking down at me with a gaze that was deep and cool. I shrank back, instinctively drawing my hand away, but the next moment, he took it. He lifted my fallen hair and tucked it behind my ear, his voice carrying a hint of tenderness. I won't. I want you. I broke into a radiant smile and threw myself into his arms. He took the ointment and applied it to my knees himself, his movements gentle, as if afraid of hurting me. Naturally, he didn't notice that the adoring consort in his arms, at that very moment, gazed back at him with eyes cold as death. After I attended him again, Eunuch Wang brought the usual tonic for the wound, but this time, I recognized the difference. This was genuine fertility medicine. I looked up in surprise at the Emperor, who watched me quietly. Your Majesty? He smiled. Medicine to aid conception. It's good for you. In that instant, I understood everything. Tears welled in my eyes, tears of joy. Your servant obeys. The Emperor was no fool. He knew I had long realized the previous tonics had been contraceptives. Yet I had drunk them willingly. He took the handkerchief and gently wiped the corner of my mouth. Imperial Consort, you are so foolish. After he left, my smile faded. I looked at the empty bowl, the genuine fertility medicine I had just consumed, and gave a soft, quiet laugh. They say the most heartless are the Imperial House. The Emperor knew perfectly well that the affections of his consorts were always more self-interest than sincerity. So my genuine, heartfelt devotion seemed all the more precious. The Emperor gave his true love to the Imperial Consort, but he could not refuse a woman who gave her true love to him, especially when I suited his tastes so perfectly. In bed, and out of it, he would only grow more fond of me. And now, he had stopped the contraceptive drafts, intending for me to bear his child. Imperial Consort, your beloved man has indeed developed feelings for me. The dream of one heart, one lifetime, one pair is already shattered. Now, let me shatter it completely. Only a very few knew that the contraceptive drafts had stopped. But the Imperial Consort found out and confronted the Emperor in a furious row. Inside the Qinquan Palace, attendants stood with heads bowed at both sides. The consort, red-eyed, glared at the Emperor. Lu Changzhou, how could you stop her birth control? Have you truly fallen for her? I'll kill her. I'll kill her. Shrieking, she abandoned all pretense of gentleness and lunged at me, face contorted with rage, as if she would strangle me. But before she had taken 2 steps, the Emperor caught her wrist and drew her into his arms. RL, stop this nonsense. Inside and outside the Qinquan Palace, the halls were filled with servants. The Emperor was trying to prevent the consort from making a public spectacle. If word got out, it would damage her further. But she believed he was protecting me. Her fury redoubled. She shoved him away, pointed at him, and screamed, I'm being nonsensical? Lu Changzhou, have you forgotten? When you were ambushed in the hunting grounds, if I hadn't taken an arrow for you, hidden you in that cave, kept you alive on dew and wild fruit, you would have died. And you promised me one heart, one lifetime, one pair. How dare you betray me like this? She stopped mid-sentence. She knew she had misspoken. The whole world knew that the Imperial Consort had saved the Emperor, and that was why he had doted on her all these years. For years, she had never once spoken of that favor, which only made him cherish her more. But now, berating him with it, so harshly and publicly, it would not inspire gratitude. It would only remind him of his own weakness and desperation in those days. Indeed, the Emperor's face darkened instantly. He released her hand, and his eyes, once so full of love and indulgence, now regarded her with a hint of scrutiny. He said nothing. The Qinquan palace fell into dead silence. The consort trembled, then threw herself into his arms, tears streaming. "Your Majesty, I only spoke out of fear. I was so afraid of losing you, that's why I said such things. These past days, whenever I think of you forgetting me, I cannot eat or sleep. I was beside myself, please forgive me." Her words were pitiful, even endearing. The emperor studied her, and at last, softened with a sigh, he drew her into his embrace and soothed her. "Imperial consort, I do not blame you. I will not forget you." His voice was as gentle as ever. The consort thought he truly meant it. She did not know that. After she left, the emperor's face turned cold and he summoned eunuch Wang. "Find out exactly how many of her people she has planted in my palace. And when we find them, how shall we deal with them? Kill them." So ruthless. In the sweet days of the past, the consort placing people around him was a sign of constant care. Now, it was an encroachment on the imperial will. The rift between emperor and consort had finally opened. Not for nothing had I personally passed the news of the stopped contraceptive drafts to Emerald Microcosm Palace. After that day, the emperor still favored the imperial consort, but he was no longer exclusively devoted to her. He frequently summoned other consorts to his bed. It was a signal. The harem stirred to life again, each woman vying for his favor. The consort, terrified of angering him further, held back her jealousy. Every day, she sent nourishing soups and tea to him, trying to recapture his heart. But every time she arrived, I was already at his side. His Majesty drank the medicinal broth I had prepared with my own hands, smiling as he praised my thoughtfulness. The consort set out her red bean pastries on the table, the very pastries they had shared when they first pledged their love. The emperor's expression softened at the memory. His gaze toward the consort warmed. He reached for one, but I gently stopped him. "Your Majesty has been working hard on state affairs lately. The imperial physician said to avoid oily foods. Perhaps it's better not to eat these." The emperor paused. The consort's face soured. "Imperial consort, you are overly cautious. A small taste won't hurt." But the emperor withdrew his hand, saying merely, "Never mind, consort. Just leave them here." And everyone knew he would not touch them. The emperor, who had once been utterly devoted to her, was no longer a man who obeyed her every whim. The consort knew this better than anyone. Just then, a minister requested an audience. The consort and I left the Qinquan palace together. On the palace path, the consort ground her teeth and glared at me. "Imperial consort, you don't get too pleased. The emperor's heart is mine. You're just a plaything. I will be the victor in the end." I gently touched my hairpin and smiled lazily. "Imperial consort, who the victor is, you don't get to decide." She stared at me with murderous eyes for a long moment, then turned and stalked away. I watched her retreating back and raised an eyebrow. "Don't disappoint me now, imperial consort." On the 7th day of the 7th month, a great drought struck the northern Jiangbei region. The land yielded no grain. The emperor, deeply troubled, could scarcely sleep and rarely visited the harem anymore. One night, after the imperial consort had shared his bed, she suddenly woke in a cold sweat. The emperor summoned the imperial physicians, but they could find nothing wrong. And yet, for 3 days, the consort kept waking in terror, her face growing gaunt, dark circles forming beneath her eyes. The emperor was deeply worried, but at a loss for what to do. He forced himself to spend more time with her. Then, when she woke again in panic, and a flash of impatience crossed the emperor's brow, her maid suddenly fell to her knees, sobbing, "Your Highness, this servant knows you do not wish to worry His Majesty, but you must tell him. Someone in the harem is using black witchcraft to harm you. If you say nothing, you may not survive." Black witchcraft, a grave taboo in the palace. If discovered, the penalty was death. The emperor was shocked. Only then did the consort, weeping, confess that she had been dreaming that she had been turned into a wooden doll, pierced again and again by nails. the pain excruciating. The emperor summoned a Taoist priest, who divined, the one who plots against the consort is close to her, closer than anyone thinks. At this, all eyes turned to me. Jade Splendor Palace, Emerald Microcosm Palace. They shared only a wall, and everyone knew that the consort and I did not get along. I was the most obvious suspect. Inside Emerald Microcosm Palace, the consort thundered, "Imperial Consort, do you confess your crime?" I was neither afraid nor cowed. What crime does your servant have to confess? You use black magic to harm me, and still you deny it? The consort looked sternly at the emperor. Your Majesty, I beg you, execute Imperial Consort immediately. The emperor was silent for a long moment, gazing at me. I looked back at him and asked quietly, Your Majesty, do you believe me? His eyes narrowed, his voice low. Imperial Consort, if this is proven, even I cannot protect you. He did not believe me. He would not defend me. I would have to prove my own innocence. Truly, the heartless imperial house. A cold laugh echoed in my heart, but my face showed only fearless composure as I turned to the consort. Imperial Consort, do you have evidence? She sneered. Master Changming is a renowned master, would he lie? I smiled too. Of course a master would not lie. But mere words are not proof. If I used black magic to harm you, there must be an object. And yet you have none. To accuse me without evidence, your servant is wronged. At this, the consort glanced almost imperceptibly at a maid behind me. Seeing her nod, the consort smiled with even greater triumph. Then, dare you allow a search of Jade Splendor Palace? All eyes fell on me. Some were suspicious, some gleeful, some smugly anticipating my downfall. But then, I smiled, calm and composed. Of course I dare. Half an hour later, the emperor's men emerged from Jade Splendor Palace. In their hands, they carried a wooden box. The consort's lips curved into a victorious smile. Here is the evidence. Imperial Consort, do you still deny it? I raised an eyebrow. The consort turned to the maids behind me and said coldly, Which of you knows the truth? I will give you a chance to confess, otherwise, you will all be beaten to death. At her words, a maid suddenly crashed to her knees. Your Highness, Your Majesty, spare us. The black magic against the consort was all planned by Imperial Consort alone. Out of jealousy for His Majesty's favor, she harbored resentment for a long time. When she heard of black magic, she sent for a wooden figure, intending to kill the Imperial Consort. The witnesses and the physical evidence all pointed to me. It seemed the crime of using black magic against the consort was now a fait accompli. The emperor's face turned ashen. Imperial Consort, do you confess? I knelt on the ground, looking up at him, my expression calm. Your Majesty, your servant has attended you for months and has never once been arrogant. I have been devoted to you with all my heart. I have never vied for favor, nor spoken a single ill word of the Imperial Consort. I do not know why she wishes to frame me, nor why this maid would bear false witness. I beg your Majesty to investigate thoroughly. As I spoke, the corners of my eyes reddened, as though my heart had been deeply wounded. The emperor faltered. The consort, however, sneered coldly. Imperial Consort, even at death's door, you cling to your lies. If you truly did nothing, then what is this? She hurled the wooden box at me, but what tumbled out was not the wooden figure she had planted. It was page after page of Buddhist sutras. Everyone froze. The emperor frowned. Imperial Consort, what is the meaning of this? At that, I seemed to break down completely. Tears streamed down my cheeks, and I wept with a heartbreaking sorrow. Your Majesty has been troubled by state affairs lately. Your servant has no way to help. So I copied sutras to pray for your Majesty and for the people, hoping that rain might come and ease your burden. I did not seek to claim credit, but I truly do not understand why the Imperial Consort would use this to falsely accuse me of harming her. At these words, the maid who had just testified against me broke down in turn, weeping. Your Majesty, spare me. It was the Imperial Consort. She threatened my family's lives to force me to bear false witness against Imperial Consort. The true practitioner of black magic is the Imperial Consort herself. The consort's face went white. What nonsense are you spouting? But the maid ground her teeth and continued. His Majesty has favored Imperial Consort you of late. And the consort burned with jealousy. She bribed Master Changming and had him prepare wooden figures carved with your Majesty's and Imperial Consort use names and birth dates to vent her hatred. If your Majesty does not believe me, send men to search. Within half a stick of incense, the Emperor's men returned. In their hands were 2 wooden figures, carved with the Emperor's and my names, covered in deep scratch marks. The consort collapsed to the ground. Your Majesty, I am wronged. How could I resent you, the one I love most dearly? But the maid retorted coldly. Of course you resent him. You resent that he cannot make you Empress, and that he cannot give you 1 heart, 1 lifetime, 1 pair. And Master Changming, unable to bear the pressure, confessed his crimes. The evidence, both human and material, was complete. The consort could not deny it. The Emperor stared at her, at the face that was still as beautiful as ever, yet somehow now seemed utterly foreign. He suddenly recalled noble consort Wang, who had died long ago, her bloody, mangled body. He could not bear to look at it. But the consort had struck that blow with ease. She could kill Wang out of jealousy, so of course she could kill you out of jealousy. And if resentment was in her heart, she could harm even him. Could this woman still be the pure, kind-hearted beloved he had imagined? I stood quietly aside, reading the Emperor's expression clearly. In my heart, I laughed. The Emperor had forgotten it was his own indulgence, his own favor, step by step, that had made the consort so arrogant, so reckless with human life. The consort wept and cried out her innocence. But her years of tyranny had made enemies of everyone. No one would speak for her now. And her sole refuge, the Emperor, on this day, he had lost the last shred of patience with her. Everyone present understood. The Imperial Consort was about to fall. After the black magic affair, the Emperor suppressed all news of it. Master Changming and all the maids and eunuchs who knew the truth were executed. The Imperial Consort was stripped of her title and confined to the cold palace. As they led her away, she fixed me with bloodshot eyes, burning with rage, clearly wondering how her meticulously laid scheme had gone so wrong. She had bribed Master Changming with silver, threatened the maid's family to coerce her testimony, and set them both to frame me. It had been a perfect plan. So what had gone wrong? But she did not know. I had long since discovered the maid's betrayal. I had set men to watch her every move, and they had seen her bury the wooden figure beneath the tree in my courtyard. When the maid was caught red-handed, she confessed everything. I sent men to rescue her family, and promised to smuggle her out of the palace. Overjoyed, she agreed to play her part, and together, we staged a fine performance for the consort. Even now, I had expected the Emperor to take the consort's life. I thought, surely there could be no greater pain than being killed by the very person you loved most. But the Emperor still could not bear it. He spared her life. Truly devoted. But that devotion, the day he visited her in the cold palace and saw his former beloved, haggard and broken, covered in filth, that day, it crumbled to nothing. The undisguised disgust that flickered in his eyes, and the way he instinctively stepped back when she approached, those were hammer blows that shattered what remained of the consort's heart. The love of the past had become, in that instant, a blade that flayed her alive. The jailers reported to me, the consort had fallen gravely ill. I, by then, Empress, sat in the position she had coveted for so long. It was only fitting that I should visit her. In the cold palace, the consort's hair was unkempt and loose, her former elegance gone. She lay sick on her pallet, the bedding reeking of decay. 3 years had passed since the black magic affair. In those years, the former Empress and the Empress Dowager had both died. I had been made Empress, mother to a prince and a princess. I had become the most honored woman in the harem, and the once adored Imperial Consort had become nothing more than a disgraced prisoner in the cold palace. I did not even need to lift a hand. The other consorts, whom she had once trampled and humiliated, were more than eager to torment her. The consort had been so abused that she was covered in wounds and barely clinging to life. But I kept her alive. I would not allow her to die. Not yet. On that day, as I entered the cold palace, she turned at the sound of my footsteps. Her eyes blazed with hatred, as though she wished to burn me to ash. Bitch! How dare you show your face here, I smiled. My voice gentle. Imperial Consort, how have you been these days? Those two words, Imperial Consort, cut into her like a knife. Bitch! You ruined me, you ruined me. She lunged from the bed, teeth bared, but the matron slapped her hard across the face. Blood trickled from the corner of the consort's mouth. She stared at me, dazed and wild-eyed, muttering, "This is all wrong, I already killed the female lead, I should be the queen of this world. How could someone as insignificant as you defeat me? This must be a dream, it has to be a dream." She babbled words that no one could understand. Everyone thought she had gone mad, but I knew exactly what she was saying. I dismissed the attendants and suddenly spoke. "I once had another name." She looked at me, confused. I smiled. "I was called Shinkia. Do you remember? Imperial Consort? Shinkia?" She repeated the name, and her face went deathly pale. "Impossible. I killed Shinkia long ago. On the very first day I was made Imperial Consort. I investigated. Shinkia was the legitimate daughter of the Shin family. You are her personal maid, IU. Don't try to deceive me, I won't fall for it." She insisted it was impossible, but her voice trembled at the end. I looked down at her, our gazes meeting. My eyes were cold as death. "You killed the wrong person. All along, you killed the wrong person. My name is Shinkia. I am the legitimate daughter of the Shin family, the female lead of this world." That is what IU told me. IU was a little beggar I found on the roadside. I had been frail since childhood, sent by my mother to live with my maternal relatives in Jiangnan. When I was sick and bedridden as a child, IU would tell me stories. She said that the world we lived in was actually a book, and I was the female lead. In the book, I would save the emperor, be taken by force and love, and eventually live happily ever after in the palace. But I did not want to live in the palace, and I did not want to be the female lead. I only wanted to live. IU listened, then smiled and took my hand, saying, "All right, IU will protect you, my lady." Later, a grave illness nearly took my life. My mother invited a Taoist priest to expel the evil spirits. He said that my fate was too heavy, yet my life too fragile, that before my coming-of-age ceremony, I would need a substitute to survive. IU volunteered to be my substitute. Overnight, she became Shinkia, the legitimate daughter of the Shin family, and I became IU. After that, I gradually recovered. Half a month before my coming-of-age ceremony, I returned to the Shin family with IU. She told me, in secret, that not long before, a woman had saved the male lead in my place. That woman had become the all-powerful imperial consort of the harem, which meant I, as the female lead, would likely never again be entangled with the emperor. I would surely live a peaceful life. We were both so happy. But disaster always strikes when people are closest to happiness. IU died the day before my coming-of-age ceremony. She died in my place. I knew that, because the imperial consort was looking for Shinkia, the future enemy who would one day threaten her. IU knew all of this, and said nothing. She simply reached up, wiped the tears from my cheeks, and smiled at me, "My lady, with the female lead, dead, you are free now." She had meant her death to buy me my freedom, but she was wrong. After that day, I was never free again. Everything I did, living, breathing, moving, was for revenge. Entering the palace, learning the courtesan's arts, playing the fool and playing the sweetheart, all of it was to climb higher, to seek vengeance, to exact justice for IU's death. The imperial consort stared at me in shock, struck speechless for a long moment. Then her face twisted with fury. She glared at me, mouth opening to scream, but the next instant, she coughed up a mouthful of blood, and her eyes began to glaze over. "I am about to die, and you tell me now that I killed the wrong person, and loved the wrong person. Shinkia, what a ruthless heart you have." I watched her agony and her degradation, and asked coldly, "Back then, you were already the imperial consort. the emperor's most beloved, utterly devoted to you, and yet you were so afraid of a so-called female lead that you killed her, even though she posed no threat to you. Why? The consort faltered. She looked up at me, her eyes bloodshot, furious, yet convinced. Because you were the female lead. Even if you were weak then, one day you would become strong, and you would steal my emperor away. I just didn't want him taken from me. What's wrong with that? I did nothing wrong. The ones in the wrong are you. Why didn't you just obediently die? Why did you have to live and stand in my way? Anyone who stands in my way deserves to die. How could the female lead go on living? Even if she did nothing. She was a threat. I simply eliminated the roots. I planned everything carefully. I wanted to become the most honored woman in this world, and I was right. I was about to achieve it. Why did you have to stop me? The ones who should die are you. Lu Changzhou, you betrayed me. So it was only for such a simple reason. Because of fear. Because of wariness. And for that, she had so casually taken the person most precious to me. As I left the cold palace, I could still hear her shrieks. The matron, fearing I would be disturbed, entered and slapped her several more times. The consort lost consciousness and fell silent. She had once looked down on servants and maids, and now she was humiliated and beaten by them. For the consort, that agony was worse than death itself. She screamed for me to kill her. I refused. Because her time had not yet come. Years passed. My son was made crown prince. After the investiture ceremony, the emperor went to a new southern beauty. I heard she bore a passing resemblance to the young imperial consort. I found it absurd. The emperor would rather favor a fake consort than face the living one. It was clear he truly despised her. But no one expected that the consort, clinging to life, would escape the cold palace, rush to the emperor, and drive a blade through his heart. Everyone froze in shock. The consort shrieked with mad laughter. Die! Let everyone die! Then she plunged the bloodied knife through her own heart. With the last of her strength, she grasped the emperor's hand and hissed. Lu Changzhou, in this palace, I alone love you, we will be together forever. But her beloved emperor wrenched his hand away, crying out to me, save me! The next moment, with strength born of madness, the consort pulled the knife free and stabbed him again and again. Blood poured from her mouth, her eyes wild. You cannot love anyone else. You belong to me alone. I gave up everything for you. I tried to defy fate itself for you. You cannot leave me. Only when the emperor had fallen utterly still did she finally close her eyes. As if content. Everyone was frozen, paralyzed by the horror before them until I shouted, what are you standing there for? Call the physicians. But everyone could see, the emperor, his heart pierced, was beyond saving. The palace erupted in chaos. No one dared to move the bodies. I stared coldly at their hands, still intertwined, and a grim smile touched my lips. Consort, consort, all these years, I have kept you alive with ginseng and tonics. Just for this day. Lovers turning on each other, there is no more splendid spectacle under heaven. So rest assured, I will see that you and the emperor are buried together, that you share the same grave, and I will pray that you are bound together for life after life. In love and torment, the emperor died. I supported my son's ascension, becoming the youngest empress dowager of the dynasty. I presided over court but was not greedy for power. When the young emperor was able to govern on his own, I returned the reins to him and withdrew to a quiet life in the harem. But my spirit grew weaker. At last, a Western painter, following my descriptions, produced a portrait of Ayu. It was very like her. So much so that I seemed to see her again. I had grown old, but Ayu remained forever young. Would she still recognize me? I wondered. Perhaps because I was old. I dreamed often. One night, I dreamed of the grapevine in my maternal grandmother's garden in Jiangnan. My father had planted it. In summer, Ayu and I would sit on the swing, reaching up to pluck the large, sweet grapes. Ayu always fed me first. Her eyes curved in a smile. My lady, so sweet. I ate the grape she offered. It was truly sweet. After I swallowed, I corrected her. I'm not my lady. Anymore, you are. Ayu gently pushed the swing. No one else knows. My lady. I just want to call you that. I blinked. Ayu. From now on, you can call me Aya, all right? That was the first time I called her elder sister. She blinked, startled, then broke into an even brighter smile. All right. The breeze was gentle. The swing swayed. I felt drowsy. But then, the swing stopped. I looked up and saw Ayu standing at the gate, waving at me. Aya, let's go pick flowers. I felt a vague unease. I shook my head. No. Ayu, let's just stay home. But Ayu paid me no heed. She turned and walked straight out. I tried to call her back, but she would not look back. Ayu! Sister! Sister, wait for me. Let me hold your hand. I was frantic. I rose and ran after her, screaming her name, but she never answered. She never turned around. She had left me. That thought seared my heart like a brand. The next instant, I woke with a start, my face drenched in tears. I looked out, red walls, green tiles, the palace. No grapevine, no swing, and no Ayu. Ayu had been gone for many years. I had always known that. But now, at this moment, the knowledge struck me like a hammer, heavy and suffocating. My consciousness began to blur. In the haze, I thought I saw Ayu, still as she once was. But this time, she did not leave me as in the dream. She held out her hand. She was smiling. She said, "My lady, Ayu is here to take you home." I blinked. I looked back. I was back beneath the grapevine, the trellis heavy with ruby-red grapes. Nearby, my little swing swayed in the breeze. I smiled. Without hesitation, I took her hand. Yes, we are going home. The story is now complete. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe and support me.